I never once thought that I would see a slavery era movie where I was rooting for the slave owner. It makes me uncomfortable just saying that. Tonight's review is on The Keeping Room, which follows a woman, her younger sister, and their slave. One day, this woman goes out to get some medicine for her sister when she comes across these two renegade northern soldiers who are traveling across the land committing these senseless acts of violence. Those two soldiers follow her all the way home, and conflict ensues. This movie has some fairly well written characters in the main leads. When I mentioned at the beginning that this movie made me root for a slave owner, I genuinely meant that, not just because she was the lesser of two evils, but you get the sense that there is this genuine mutual respect between the older sister and the woman who's working for her. The little sister is a little harder to care about. She's downright bitchy towards the woman who's working for her and her sister, even going so far as to suggest that this woman shouldn't even talk to her. She carries that mindset of the crueler slave owners of the time. However, I feel like Mad was the most interesting character out of the three. I actually took the effort to learn her name. Referring to her simply as the slave woman or the slave seemed kind of fucked up. But yeah, she felt like she was the strongest character out of the trio. Um, Despite being in this position, she has her own desires and her own needs in life. And there's even a point in the film where she has this great monologue that drove me to tears. And then, as far as the villains are concerned, the movie does a great job at setting them up at the beginning as these very despicable and genuinely threatening characters. But then, once it got to the point where they arrived at these women's home and started threatening them, I feel like they kind of grew weaker as characters. Actually, I'll take that back. I wouldn't say that the villains in this movie get weaker as much as the plot itself. I mean, just a big chunk of this movie is dedicated to letting you get to know the main characters, establishing the villains, and leading up to the eventual main conflict, and then the final act just sort of happens. I mean, I'm not saying that this movie should have been like Straw Dogs, but it should have been more like Straw Dogs. I don't know. I don't think that the final act of this movie was terrible by any means. I mean, it just wasn't all that memorable. And really, that sums up my opinion of the movie. The Keeping Room, like I said, does have some very well written lead characters, but it just kind of peters out towards the final act to become this very average, middle of the road sort of movie that's really not been all that fun to review. That's all I've got to say. Hopefully, the next review will be a tad more exciting, and I hope you all have a good one.